Back with the breaking news. Steve Bannon to turn himself in on Monday, indicted for refusing to comply with January 6th committee subpoenas. He can face up to a year in prison. In the days before January 6th, Bannon was at the Willard Hotel along with Giuliani and John Eastman, author of the so-called coup memo. One riot committee member says the hotel became the insurrectionist headquarters, Bannon regaining full MAGA insider status after getting booted from Trump's White House way back in 2017.
Bannon gets bounced.
West Wing lightning rod Steve Bannon is out tonight as President Trump's chief strategist.
Steve Bannon is out. He walked out of the West Wing and right into the Breitbart newsroom, declaring he feels jacked up and free and says his hands are back on his weapons.
After Bannon was axed, Ari Melber, who is usually in this seat, grilled him.
What's your current relationship with President Trump?
You can see it every day on TV. I mean, it's exactly what people report. You know, President Trump's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. Remember, I didn't really know President Trump that well before I stepped in and took in as CEO of the campaign.
But he said a lot about you when you had a public pardon. Do you
Sure.
think he still believes those things about you?
I don't know, and I don't care.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. In 2018, Breitbart's former spokesperson wrote about Bannon's exit. Quote, Bannon's character and temperament made his stunning fall inevitable. Warning, make no mistake, Steve won't stop. Those words were written by Kurt Bardella. Bardella had already made a public break from Bannon while repudiating Trump and the entire MAGA movement. Kurt Bardella joins me live along with Neil Katyal on what motivates Steve Bannon and what scares him. Kurt, I will start with you. I did not know you before you rejected the dark side and pushed back against the emperor. But you have an insight into working for Steve Bannon that I think most Americans would never want, but we nevertheless want to understand. I'm going to play some audio of him right now, and then I want to get your thoughts on the other side about what it was like to work with this kind of person.
Not national, Pat. Pat, I'm talking about Florida. Please stay focused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just stay focused, okay? I want to go through these states. I don't give a about a national number. Will you shut the up and let the guy talk?
Oh, okay. So far,
I've heard of horrible bosses. I could work for Jennifer Aniston. I could work for Kevin Spacey. I wouldn't want to work for this guy. What was it like working under Steve Bannon when you were at Breitbart, Kurt?
Well, it was a lot like that, Jason. That excerpt is a terrific representation of what Bannon is like every single day, just about every single phone call that I ever was a part of. And it just shows this is Steve Bannon. This posture, this I'm going to bully and use through sheer force of personality and, I guess, vocabulary, we'll call it. I'm going to use these things as instruments to impose my will on whoever I want to achieve whatever my agenda is. And that's how he's felt towards the January 6th Select Committee. That's how he's felt towards Congress. He really believes that he's above it all. He believes that he can beat the other side into submission, that the other side doesn't have the stomach for this kind of fight, that the other side doesn't have the resolve that he does, and that ultimately they will back down and that he will survive and he will win. Bannon's the ultimate cockroach, Jason. This is a guy who I watched go from buddying up to Rand Paul, to then moving on to Ted Cruz, to then for a hot second it was Ben Carson. Back in the day it was Sarah Palin. Then ultimately it fell onto Donald Trump. And he's someone that's always been in search of that host, a parasite to attach himself onto in order to achieve more visibility, more fame, more money, more access, more power. And in this dynamic that we're seeing right now with this recent indictment, and I'll say this partly because Neil's on with us and I'm a big Billions fan, Steve Bannon thinks he's Dollar Bill Stern. In season 1 of Billions, Dollar Bill Stern gets arrested, gets by Chuck Rhodes, and he sits there across from him and says, I don't recognize your authority. I'm Kaiser Sosa. That's what Bannon thinks of himself as in this situation.
So here's the thing, Neil, and this is what's interesting to me. When you see, because look, obviously, Donald Trump is not nearly as nice as acts, right? He's not nearly as charming and charismatic. When you see somebody like Steve Bannon in a video like that, cussing at people, harassing people, insulting folks, in your experience, is that the kind of person who's going to inspire any kind of loyalty? Because, look, we see right now there are people who may be loyal to Trump or what they think is Trump's remaining power. But if they have been abusive in the workplace, if they've been terrible, horrible bosses to people, isn't it likely that there will be people who want to turn on Bannon and put the screws on him? And is that something the DOJ has access to?
So first of all, I've been on a lot of TV with both of you guys, like dozens of hours, and I don't think I've ever disagreed with you before, but I'm going to disagree with both of you. So Jason, the idea that Steve Bannon is like the Emperor in Star Wars, or Kurt, the idea that Bannon is like Dollar Bill and Billions, those people are competent in what they do. You know, they know how to actually get evil done. Bannon is a joke. He's kind of like Trump. He has the anti-Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to, you know what the word is. And so, you know, absolutely, Jason. I think, like, you know, the most important point here is that if you're Trump, or if you're, frankly, anyone else in January 6th, you've got to worry that Bannon could turn against you. And this is not a guy known for his loyalty. So it's always about what's in it for himself. There's no like underlying principle, as Kurt's saying, behind him. And so that's your kind of classic prisoner's dilemma situation that prosecutors use all the time. And so whether you're Trump or whether you're Mark Meadows or anywhere, you know, someone lower, you got to worry that Bannon might be thinking about trying to make a deal. Now, he didn't have to worry about that in the last administration. Yes, he was indicted before for cheating on his Build the Wall campaign and ultimately convicted. But he knew at the end of the day, he had a get out of jail free card because President Trump was the president at the time and pardoned him. There's no get out of jail free card anymore. And so a self-interested, frankly, evil person like Bannon is probably going to think about what's best for him and not anything else.
So both envisage incompetence, he's more Skeletor than Palpatine. I get it, Neil. That makes sense to me. So I want to go back to this idea. So historically, how effective are these kinds of prosecutions? Because I'm looking at the sheet here. You know, Congress doesn't necessarily have a great track record when it comes to prosecuting people that, you know, that go back to the 50s, sort of during the Red Scare, they were pretty effective. How likely is it that Congress will be effective in going all the way through, not just with an indictment, but a full-fledged legal criminal process with Steve Bannon? Is that something we're likely to see, or is this just sort of a scare tactic to get him to come in and finally fess up?
Kurt, do you want to take that?
Oh, that was to you, Neil.
Oh, sure. Great. So I think the question, Jason, is not really about whether Congress will be effective, but now whether the Justice Department will be effective. This is now an official prosecution by the United States government, headed by the Attorney General of the United States. So Congress has actually now moved out of the picture when it comes to Bannon, and it is just a standard law enforcement action like everything else. Yes, Congress made a criminal referral and asked Merrick Garland to indict Steve Bannon, but now they've actually done it. And the question about whether it's will be successful, this prosecution, is a rather difficult one because honestly, we don't have them very much. The last one we had was 38 years ago. And the reason is because when Congress says, hey, come forward and tell us the truth under oath, most normal people comply with that. And to the extent they don't, they have some really good reason. And that's why Congress doesn't vote a criminal referral. But here, they voted that criminal referral. The Attorney General studied it very carefully and made the decision that we should have that the indictment should be presented to the grand jury, and the grand jury has now signed off on that indictment. So the criminal process has begun. And if you're Bannon, I think you got no hope. I think this is not a hard case. He could hire Clarence Darrow, and it's not going to matter.
Kurt Bardella and Neil Katyal, fantastic conversation. Thank you guys so much.